Welcome back. Prediction markets, which have exploded in popularity in recent months, are now facing intensifying scrutiny after a U.S. Special Forces soldier who was involved in the operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was charged with betting on Maduro's January capture. Authorities say Master Sergeant Gannon Ken Van Dyke bet a total of about $33,000 on the Maduro operation on the prediction market platform Polymarket and cashed in, making more than $400,000 on bets. This comes after another platform, Kalshi, suspended 3 political candidates from its site this week after catching them betting on their own races. President Trump had this to say when asked by reporters about bets on events like Maduro's capture and the Iran war. Listen.
The whole world, unfortunately, has become somewhat of a casino, but it is what it is. No, I think that I'm not happy with any of that stuff, but they have all these different sites. They have predictive markets. It's a crazy world. It's a much different world than it was.
Now, we should note President Trump's son, Don Jr., is an advisor to both Polymarket and Kalshi, and Trump Media is currently working on its own prediction market, Truth Predict, on the president's Truth Social platform. Joining me now is NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. So, Tom, break this down. Master Sergeant Van Dyke appeared in court in North Carolina. What more did you learn about him and the charges he's facing?
Well, that's right, Kristen. When you lay it out that way, it seems like everything is going to be up for gambling at this point. As far as what happened in court today, Van Dyke had his first appearance. That's not an opportunity to enter a plea. He was released on bond. Is going to have to surrender any weapons unless he needs them for his as prescribed by the military. On top of that, he's going to surrender his passports as well. He'll be in New York next week, is expected to anyway, to have his first appearance before the judge who will ultimately handle his case, as this case was charged by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. And that's important because that's an office that has a lot of experience in charging insider-type trading cases. And you might say, well, what does an insider trading case have to do with something involving Polymarket? But that's really been a focus for the U.S. Attorney's Office here. They've been looking into this, and they've charged this with the type of thing that you would be charged with if you had insider-type knowledge on the stock market. It's being charged in this particular instance of somebody who was part of the Joint Special Operations Command, had absolute knowledge of the U.S.'s plans involving Maduro, and then, according to the grand jury, made bets based on that information, a pretty serious charge. So he is facing those commodity charges, several counts, each of them up to 10 years in prison, Kristen.
Yeah, raises all sorts of questions about national security as well. Tom, this is not an isolated incident. Prediction markets have been sparking ethical concerns for bets on everything from the Iran war, whether the U.S. would take over Greenland, and the companies are responding. What are they saying, Tom?
Well, the companies are responding, and one of the things that they're doing, and the U.S. Attorney's Office acknowledged that Polymarket had been cooperating here, is that they are trying to pick up on these suspicious patterns. Look, these type of gamblers, which is effectively what it is, that they're placing these bets on these actions, they typically tend to bet big and bet outside of kind of the normal activity. So all of a sudden you might have, you know, you and I have a wager between the Patriots and the Eagles. It's a $15 wager. Okay, no big deal. But then all of a sudden somebody comes in and bets $10,000 against the Eagles, Kristen. You'd be like, well, wait a minute. Does somebody have some outside knowledge here of what's going to happen? So they've been looking at those type of anomalies, if you will. They've even got an investigation that's open into somebody that was using a hairdryer at an airport to try to influence the recorded temperature. People bet on the temperature that it's going to be in a particular city or a particular place on a given day. And somebody, they're looking into whether or not they were using a hairdryer to try to influence and raise the temperature. So they're acutely aware that people will lose faith in these markets if they think that people are able to rig them.
Just extraordinary. And of course, I always bet on the Eagles, Tom. You know that.
Well,
look, I want to turn to these political candidates. They've been suspended for betting on their own campaigns. Tom, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is something that we've seen. You noticed the fines there on the screen going into the thousands of dollars. People betting whether or not somebody was going to run. Then they announced that they're running. and putting their own money on that. That's something that, again, speaks to kind of the challenges that these prediction sites have, because it would be difficult. There's certainly examples. You look at Enron, WorldCom, some of the major companies that have cooked their books over the years, or alleged to have cooked their books over the years, that have led to massive amounts of fraud and people that were buying or selling inside those companies. There's been a lot of work to try to regulate that out, or at least make it difficult for companies to do it. It would be tough to manipulate Apple's books and their sales to the level that would really move markets by somebody. But as we see with these candidate announcements and in politics, think about other permutations. Who could be a vice presidential candidate? Who could be a vice presidential pick, rather? Who could be a presidential candidate? Go on and on and on. And there's big money here. And again, it speaks to these markets trying to have integrity going forward.
All right. Tom Winter, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. We've been following a lot of legal developments today and all week long, from prediction markets to the DOJ dropping its probe into the Fed Chair, Jerome Powell. And to discuss it all, I'm joined now by former Trump White House attorney Ty Cobb. Ty, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Always great to see you.
Always nice to see you, dear. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for being here. I do have to start with this news you just heard me discussing with Tom, these charges against the soldier accused of making a whopping $400,000 by betting on the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Polymarket says, look, this is a sign the guardrails on the site are working. Do you agree with that from a legal standpoint?
No, absolutely not. These things should be abandoned, particularly during the Trump administration. I think the worst fact that came out today, beyond the absurdity of having a service member bet on a classified raid that he was about to undergo, is the fact that Trump's Truth Social is going to start a prediction market as well. So you can be assured that since most of these outrageous, weird betting patterns with millions of dollars in returns have been around Trump's foreign policy and other events like that, that the corruption at the top what should be a major concern for all Americans.
Do you see that idea that Trump Media Company is potentially pursuing starting its own prediction site? Is that a potential conflict of interest, Ty?
Sure, but so is the fact that he's stolen $4 billion from the American taxpayers since he went into office 15 months ago. The fact that he took a $500 million bribe from the UAE in exchange for our AI chips. I mean, the level of corruption is staggering, and this just gives him another avenue to rake the taxpayers.
Well, let me ask you, broadly speaking, about the president's policies and the legality of that. Obviously, we are tracking the war with Iran, Ty. We are approaching the 60-day mark of the war in Iran. That's significant because that's, of course, the deadline for the War Powers Act, for the president to go to Congress to seek congressional approval. Now, the president has said a number of times he doesn't think he needs Congress's approval. One, do you think he does once it reaches the 60-day deadline? And number two, do you think he will seek it?
So certainly he does under the law. The law is not really that much of a guardrail for him, as we've seen from the hundreds of judicial opinions highlighting his unconstitutional illegal acts in the past few months. He has defied many of those orders. Will he defy Congress? I think, that could be an event where actually some congressional Republicans find a spine and do vote to impose the War Powers Act. I hope that'll be the case. The votes have been so close so far, but I think once he goes over the 60-day requirement of the statute, that other congressmen, even Republicans, may express their concerns about this and do it with their votes.
Ty, this is significant what you're saying. I just want to stop there for a second, because you're effectively saying you anticipate some Republican members of Congress to change their stance after that 60-day mark is met. Is that how you see it?
You would think they would, since the law requires them to. But there hasn't been a lot of indication of courage or character among the Republicans in the last 15 months. But I think some of the even the staunchest conservative people, do believe that when the country's at war, that all the bells and whistles need to be intended to. And this is one of the most serious ones we have in our legal framework.
Let me ask you about the Justice Department dropping its investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell, but Jeanine Pirro very clear that she is prepared to reopen it if she thinks that's necessary. What was your reaction to those developments today? What are the implications?
I think it was imminently foreseeable. It's more important to Trump to get Jerome Powell out than it is, to
unfortunately, we think that we have lost our connection with Ty Cobb. We have a number of other topics to discuss with him, though, so we will try to reestablish that connection and get him back on the other side of a very... we have him back. Here he is.
Ty,
keep going.
So
your reaction.
Yeah,
That's
so sorry.
okay.
I don't know what happened. But
That's
no,
okay.
So the reaction is that this was predictable because Trump is desperate to find somebody who will do his bidding at the Fed. I hope Wash is a little bit more of a stand-up guy than other people in the government like Hegseth and Patel and RFK Jr. would be. Ideally, he can come in and sustain monetary policy in an independent way. But Trump's desperate to get rid of Powell. I'm not sure if I'm Tom Tillis, this is actually enough to get me to back off, because what they're saying is, okay, we're not going to prosecute him now. We'll wait until after Wash is confirmed and Powell is no longer chairman. It's not much of a abandonment of this, even though there was no case. A prosecutor was removed from this case because there was no case. And the Justice Department, with Pirro involved, it's clear that they will do whatever Trump demands. So if Trump wants to pick this up again after Wash is confirmed, they likely will do so. She also lied about the significance of what they were doing. I mean, she pretended that they had referred it to the Inspector General. They didn't refer it to the Inspector General. Jerome Powell himself referred this to the Inspector General over a year ago. The Inspector General doesn't report to the Justice Department. The Inspector General doesn't report to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The Inspector General reports to Congress. And the Inspector General issued a statement today making it plain that they were working on their report, hope to finalize it soon, and would report it to Congress, not to Pirro.
Well, Ty, I think you're right. There will be a lot of focus on Pirro's statement. I will not hesitate to restart a criminal investigation should the facts warrant doing so. Let me ask you before I let you go.
Which is a concession. So that's a concession that the facts currently don't warrant a criminal investigation, even though one was underway.
All right. Well, before I let you go, I do have to ask you about Pam Bondi. President Trump fired her as Attorney General. Ty, what do you make of Todd Blanche serving as acting Attorney General? Do you think he should be put in that role permanently?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, he was Trump's personal lawyer, had to leave his law firm in New York to undertake that, subsequently moved his family down to the, Mar-a-Lago bubble, which is probably the only place they can go to the supermarket without receiving the enmity that they deserve. He is there to do one thing at this stage of the game, which is Trump's bidding, and he will do Trump's bidding no matter how horrible these acts are, and no matter how facetious his defense of those acts are. For example, he's insisted that Trump had a duty and a right to dictate government Justice Department prosecutions. That turns on its head 50 years of independence subsequent to Watergate. He's insisted that the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment was somehow legitimate when, the Southern Poverty Law Center, every informant that they paid, they shared that information with the Justice Department. So it's silly. I mean, it was just merely because the Southern Poverty Law Center is critical of Trump, critical of Kash Patel directly. This is just another among the many revenge prosecutions that we see ongoing. As they embrace as they embrace the Proud Boys, but push back on the Southern Poverty Law Center that's called out government corruption and discrimination over time.
All right, Ty Cobb, thank you for being here. Thank you for battling through those technical glitches to stick around. We always appreciate your perspective. Thanks, Ty.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.